Welcome back to AM Northwest. They're the new medications transforming weight loss and our world for better and for worse. Here to share how his personal journey led him to deeply research obesity and our relationship with food, we welcome the author of Magic Pill, award-winning journalist Johann. Good to see you again, Johann. So tell me about tell me about your personal journey.
You know, the moment I learned about the existence of these new weight loss drugs, I felt so conflicted because, I knew that we now have this new kind of drug that causes you to lose 15% of your body weight. And I could immediately see the benefits for that. I'd been obese most of my adult life. I'm older now than my grandfather ever got to be because he died of a heart attack. Loads of the men in my family die of problems related to obesity. So I could see, right, there's a real advantage here. But I also thought, can it really be as good as it seems, right? Can you really have such a thing as a kind of a free lunch? I guess on Ozempic it'd be a smaller free lunch, right? So I spent a year doing a really deep dive into the science of this, going all over the world, interviewing the leading experts and taking the drugs myself. And what I learned is kind of complicated and fascinating, I think, but I'll never forget how it felt at first. The second day I was taking the drugs, I was lying in bed and I woke up and I thought, I feel something really weird. What is it? What am I feeling? And it took me about 5 minutes to realize I had woken up and I wasn't hungry. That had never happened to me
Oh,
before.
wow.
And I went to this just up the street from where I live. And I went in and I ordered what I used to order for breakfast every morning, which is a huge chicken sandwich with loads of chicken and loads of mayo in it. And I had like 3 or 4 mouthfuls and I just felt full. It was really strange. And you feel so full so fast. It's why I lost, 42 pounds in a year.
So then you decided to research this. And I mean, when you think about it, obesity is kind of more of a modern day problem. I mean, 50 years ago, obesity wasn't as high as it is now.
It's a really important point. Just Google photographs of beaches in this country in the year I was born, 1979. They're really weird to us. Everyone appears to be skinny, right?
Yeah.
Where was everyone else? And then you look at obesity has exploded in my lifetime. And we know why, right? And this is crucial to understanding the drugs as well. So obesity blows up everywhere that makes one change. It's not where people become weak-willed or lazy or any of those other stigmatizing things. It's where we move from mostly eating a diet based on fresh whole foods that are prepared on the day to mostly eating a diet that's processed and ultra-processed foods, which are constructed out of chemicals in factories. And it turns out this new kind of food that humans never ate before us affects our bodies completely differently. It undermines our ability to ever feel full. I don't think I had ever felt full properly, given my diet. I've been basically all this junk all my life until I took these drugs. What these drugs do is they give you back your feeling of satiety, but at a cost.
So what did you discover about these drugs?
Well, there's huge benefits here, right? We know that if you reverse obesity, you reverse your risk of cancer, dementia, heart disease, diabetes, over 200 known diseases and complications. So there are huge, huge benefits. But of course, I wanted to know what are the risks. And I go through 12 big risks in the book. Some of them are quite significant. But the one that most affected me actually was a kind of unexpected one. So some doctors have discovered that a minority of people seem to be becoming depressed or even suicidal when they take these drugs. It wasn't that bad for me, but I did feel kind of a bit muted in my emotions. I was thinking, what is that? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And this is one of the things I go through in the book, that there's loads of things I think people need to be prepared for before they take these drugs, as well as helping them weigh the risks. And for me, I realized, so what these drugs do is they interrupt your eating patterns. You can't eat the way you did before. And for me, I realized how much of my eating was driven by calming myself down, by comforting myself from when I was a very small child. That was actually the main driver of my eating. And you can't do that when you're on Ozempic, right? I remember going into a branch of KFC. I'd had a bad day. I ordered a bucket of fried chicken. I suddenly thought, oh, I can't eat this, right? I'm just going to have to feel bad. Now, that can be a good thing. If you bring those feelings to the surface, you can deal with them in a better way. But that can be a difficult transition. And it's one of many things I think everyone watching, I hope my book, Magic Pill, is a guide both to how you weigh the risks. So the 70% of us who are overweight or obese, if you've tried dieting and it didn't work, and almost all of us have, you've really got a choice. You've got to weigh two things. You've got to weigh the risks of continuing to be obese against the risks of these drugs. And there isn't an easy answer for that because it's individual, right? If, for example, you have thyroid cancer in your family, I would urge you not to take the drugs because they seem to boost thyroid cancer risk. If you're trying to get pregnant, I would urge you not to take them because we know that when you give these drugs to rats, they're more likely to have babies with birth deformities.
Oh.
But if you're severely obese and you don't have those risks, I would probably recommend that you take them. So really, I think people have to go through anyone who's telling you, yay, these drugs are a miracle, or boo, these drugs are the devil, I think is missing the more complicated weighing of the risks and benefits and thinking through what this is going to mean for all of us. And it's going to transform the culture around us. 47% of people want to take these drugs. We need to think about this much more carefully and take a beat to think it through, both psychologically, emotionally, and physically.
You talk in the book too about this one cafe, I think it's in Vegas, where they weigh people and then they give them free food if they're over a certain amount of weight. Tell me about what you realize with that.
It's called a Heart Attack Grill. It's just off Fremont Street. Well, we're a culture that encourages obesity, right? This is a culture, in fact, the fancy word for it is we live in an obesogenic environment. It makes it very easy to become obese and very hard to be a healthy weight. So anyone watching, if you have struggled with your weight all your life, as I have, know that you are not a failure. You are an entirely typical product of this dysfunctional environment, right? And we're all in a kind of trap. Now, the most important thing for us to do is to dismantle the trap. I went to countries that have done that, from the Netherlands to Japan. Japan has almost no childhood obesity, right? I learned how they did that. We've got to follow their lead. But if you're my age, or older, or even a bit younger, it's too late. You're in the trap, right? We
Right.
live in this environment.
Right.
There's a lot we can do, but we're being offered this trap door. We've got one trap door here. It's a risky trap door. We've got to think very carefully about whether we go through the trap door, but we've got to level with ourselves about where we are and the risks we're now facing.
Are you still on the drug?
I decided to continue taking it, and the thing that decided it for me is that the best studies now show if you take these drugs and you started with a BMI higher than 27, it reduces your heart attack and stroke risk by 20%. So this could literally be saving my life. So for me, even though I am worried about some of the risks, think about the long-term risks, right? So we don't know anything about the long-term risks of these drugs. We know that it used to be thought they primarily work on your gut. In fact, we now know these drugs primarily work on your brain. They change your brain. I go through how in the book. And there's obviously a question, if you're taking a drug that alters your brain and you have to take it for your whole life because it stops working when you stop taking it, what will that mean 40, 50 years down the line? We know some other drugs, think about antipsychotics, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
50 years ago, doctors started giving them to people because they judged the benefits outweigh the risks. And it was only 40, 50 years later they discovered that if you take these drugs, you're much more likely to get dementia. Now, I'm not suggesting these drugs will cause dementia. I'm just saying we have no idea what the long-term effects could be. Although another expert, Dr. Shauna Levy at Tulane University School of Medicine in New Orleans, said to me, look, we don't know the long-term risks of these drugs, but we do know the long-term risks of obesity, and unfortunately they are really, really bad. Even something as simple as diabetes. If you get diabetes, it knocks 15 years off your life on average. And that's one of the most common effects of being obese. So if it was just the risks of the drugs, you'd look at it and go, well, you're crazy to take this. But that's not the choice.
Right.
And of course, if you can lose the weight through dieting and not take this risk, by all means do it.
That's the way to do it.
But
Gotcha.
sadly, it failed for 90% of us.
Yeah. We want to tell everyone again, the book is titled Magic Pill. Johann Hari, thank you so much. Great talking with you.
Oh, what a pleasure. What joy, Helen. Thanks so much.
You bet. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.